What's up, guys? It's your boy Mizzy, and I'm here today to review the 1982 classic, The Thing. This right here, in my opinion, is a perfect movie. There's a lot of movies that are great in time, but they still have stuff that, we like, oh, this could have been better, this one. This, in my opinion, is one of the movies that was perfect, and like I said, nothing needed to be changed. And I even seen the more recent one, the remake or re-envision one, and it was okay. It was okay. I think I liked it better than most people, but it still didn't hold a candle to the original. But anyways, guys, everybody know the storyline is practically there's a thing, pun intended, that there's an organism that can morph into any person or animal. Like it can be anything. And then that already right there is a great premise to a story. Think of an alien that, like I say, if you was with your friends or anybody out, and like I say, we can't tell who's who. We can't tell if a dog is a dog. Like we can't differentiate any organism. That right there already is a great premise. Then all of a sudden, let's take it up a notch. We're in the Antarctic. We're in a frigid, cold place. We're in a base camp, isolated from a lot of people. Like I say, and you feel that isolation with the cinematography of how cold it looks outside. When you seeing people's face, you really feel like, man, it's you're isolated and you're by yourself. John Carpenter, and like I said, of course, with Halloween and all this, he had immediate success with a lot of them movies. But John Carpenter is funny because this movie actually wasn't met with a lot of love at the beginning it was made. A lot of people thought that it was just a gore fest. They was like, oh man, it really wasn't that creative. And I always tell people, man, critics, even me, myself, I always go see a movie yourself and critique it for yourself. But critics, you can take Rotten Tomatoes, any movie critic that you see, and you can go read their review or watch their review, and then you'll see over time, it's movies that when they first came out were criticized, but then years later, people went back and now they say it's a masterpiece. Well, it was the same movie from the beginning. It just, you wasn't open to that movie at the time. And a lot of times, a lot of the culture in the world is a lot of sheep culture. And until one person says it's great, nobody else won't recognize it's great. And like I said, I always think for yourself and, like I said, go see the movie yourself. But this movie, like I said, it was great. Kurt Russell, amazing performance. This movie, when you talk about practical effects, they're top notch. And I always say this, and it makes me think, even though like I say this Star Wars has nothing to do with this, but it's an older film as well. I always think like, what made some of those old horror movies so great? Because like I say, at that time they didn't have a lot of the special effects and all the technology we have nowadays. You would think that now we would be able to, man, whatever the best horror movie we can make easily now. But a lot of times we see the movies, it's like I say, not even just horror, but we see a lot of movies now don't stack up to the movies in yesteryears. And that's because I felt a lot of people, you had to be more creative. You couldn't just rely on CGI. Like I say, just like the Thing, the more recent one, a lot of CGI, and a lot of it didn't stack up. But like I said, a lot of people rely on a lot of CGI, and like I said, you don't build a storyline. You don't flush out a great story. You're not sending her like, what? We want to make the best story possible. A lot of people just like, oh man, what? This the story people loved previously, so we're just gonna do a brand new one. And like I said, that's why John Carpenter, when it comes to horror, like I say, he takes the cake. But anyway, like I said, man, Kurt Russell was great. Like I said, man, and like I said, man, I'm glad that, like I said, watching older movies, it makes you appreciate all the practical effects. Because it's a big difference in films when you stop seeing so much CGI. We just see too much CGI now. I get sick of seeing so much CGI. But anyways, man, this was like say some of the best suspense ever too, because like I said, man, you got to think about it. You're trying to figure out who is this thing, and like I say, man, the one of the best scenes I've seen in a horror movie to this date is the blood test. Man, that was an incredible, well shot scene. When Kurt Russell, he's testing the blood, like I say, he has the vial, or what, I'm not sure the exact name. Like I say, it may not be a vial, but when he has the hot needle, testing the blood, and then like I say, he's testing it. Then there's people tied in rope in the room as well, and as they're tied up, he's testing the blood, testing, and all of a sudden you start feeling like, well, is this really working? Like, is this really gonna tell us who the thing is? Because all of a sudden you're seeing like, okay, none of it is working. Even Kurt Russell face, he's starting to look kind of like, I'm not sure, like, if this really working. Then all of a sudden when he's about to test it, and I can't remember what the one guy said, but the one guy was like, he said, oh man, what we doing and stuff. And then he's like, well, we're gonna test you last. Practically insinuate, oh, well, maybe you're the thing. And then soon as he hits it, like I say, it jumps out, like I say, a great jump scare. And then the thing, like I say, the person who it was transforms, and the other people are tied up. Man, like I said, man, great tension, great suspense building. Like I said, man, it just shows how important in movies it is to have a great script and great actors. Like I say, when you have great actors, great tight script, you can flush out the roles properly. It just really, like I say, accentuates when the director has a vision and he wants to bring it to film. And that's why I always I can't remember what movie right now it was, but a lot of times they're directors, and we see the movie, and if it's not good, we'll be like, oh man, this director wasn't good. But a lot of times these studios, once they get involved, they'll change the director's whole vision. It be so many rewrites, and a lot of times certain directors just don't have control to put their vision on screen. It's almost like when the whole Justice League, Zack going through all that. Like I said, it's just great when, like I said, a director has a vision and knows exactly what he's doing. But anyways, guys, I'm going to get to a couple of my favorite scenes. Man, the chest defibrillator scene, that right there, like I said, practical effects. And anybody who hasn't seen this movie, and like I said, I know it's an older movie, and some people, especially younger people, my age and younger, feel like, oh man, that movie is old, I don't want to watch it. I tell a lot of people, man, watch older movies. I appreciate all the older movies, but I highly suggest, please go back and watch this. But the chest defibrillator scene, when he has the, like he's about to give CPR, and as soon as he puts his hands down, the guy's chest open up, catches both his arms, and when he pulls back, it rips his arms completely off. Man, that scene, like I said, it's certain scenes that when you watch movies, you'll never forget. Like I said, and I haven't watched this movie recently to like catch back up on it, but I always remember that. Like I said, it's just along with the, like I said, the blood test scene. I always remember that. But like I said, man, this movie, it was great. I really just love how in this movie it showed how you don't really need a big budget. You to make a great film, you don't need all these this superstar. It's a lot of actors in here that wasn't well known. And to tell the truth, most of the time, the great horror movies, a lot of times they're actors that wasn't very well known, but they fit the role that they was playing well. And like I said, I could tell John Carpenter, he picked who he wanted, and like I said, he flushed out the script fabulous. But like I said, man, I love this movie, especially the ending. I always like movies that kind of end on the, one of the best things when going to see movies or watching movies is discussing them with your friends, family, loved ones, whoever, and, having debates. So when this movie ends, it just kind of ends with Kurt Russell and the other guy talking, and it kind of just, fades out. And at the end, you kind of don't, like I said, of course, it seemed like the thing was killed, but we don't actually know for certain. Like I said, because like I said, it still was a little like, well, you know, could Kurt Russell, and I've seen this, a lot of people question this, like, could Kurt Russell all of a sudden be the thing? And it's great because, like I said, man, we just see like how quick, if a story, like I said, if you have a story that's really put together well, and I can say, and then the ending ends like this, it just shows like, oh man, and now we can, like I say, we can debate like, oh wait, was he the person? Did he end up being a person? And it's like, it's just open-ended. I love when the director decides like, you know what, I'm gonna leave on kind of a high note, but I'm also gonna leave the audience questioning like, dang man, so what happened after that? Like, did they leave Antarctica? Like, where did they go from there? But anyways, guys, like I said, man, I could rant, you know, talk forever, but man, I appreciate the love. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and I catch you next time.